There we go. So for those you who are unable to attend, you're able to view the video. So welcome to this kickoff meeting. We've been working with you guys for the last handful of years, first with Kansas State University, and then we've expanded to the entire system. This as the formal kickoff for LibreNet membership can go in a variety of different ways because different people who join the LibreNet and different organizations have different goals. So I tend to be a little flexible in the way this kickoff meeting goes. I'm not going to be the primary one doing this. Justin Schorb will be here, and he's going to be introducing himself momentarily. But I wanted to reiterate that while Justin does have some slides they want to go through in terms of the bigger picture of stuff. It's worthwhile for you to channel your inner self and meditate or whatever it takes in order to identify the questions that you want to be addressed and what the goals are that you want to use LibreText for. And then we can hone our conversation in order to be able to address that. Sometimes people come in with individual projects they want to do. That's more of a project, more of a campus-based goal. But states also have their own specific emphases that they want to be able to address, and it's important for us to be able to do so. So does anyone have anything they wanted to chime in at this stage in terms of where they want this conversation to go? Is it just meant to be a general overview, or there's some specific things that you want us to be able to make sure that we target off of here? Because even 2 hours is not enough in order to be able to go through everything that the LibreVerse is able to provide you. So any thoughts, concerns, questions?
I think we have a group with a range of different experiences with LibreTexts already. So I think a general overview is probably a good place to start. But if anybody has specific things they would like to cover, please do chime in.
Okay. Um, eh, in that case, I'll let Justin start to move forward with that. I'm going to be in the background, and probably doing a little bit of other work. But if you need me to pay careful attention, just throw a virtual rock at me, and I'm happy to chime in order to be able to give you my feedback. With that, let me hand it off to Justin, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, so as Delmar mentioned, I'm Justin, and I joined the team about 6 months ago, full time, and I'm building up the Academy program, which these Jumpstart trainings are slowly moving into my area, although Delmar's done every single one in the past. And my background is in chemistry education research and online textbook design, and I've actually worked as a graduate student and as a professor with LibreTexts for over a decade. So especially if you want to get into talking about the pedagogy of online stuff, that's always things that I really enjoy. So this is something that I'm excited to help out with, and get things going. I did notice someone said a little basic overview. So we've had two webinars so far this year in January and February that are free, and you can find, I can show you later, on what is just basically in the LibreTexts world, all the different things that we have. And then basic ideas about how to find textbooks and how to author textbooks. And I've taken a couple pieces from there just to kind of give a quick overview of things. But as Delmar said, this is really a choose your own adventure thing. So if there's anything that you want to go into more detail, have me poke around and show you, just make a little note. We can either hit those after I get through the overview, or if you have a pertinent question, I'll try to monitor the chat, but anyone can feel free to unmute and just flag me down if it's pertinent to answer that question right away. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Everyone see that okay? Hopefully okay. Yell at me if you can't. So this is the LibreNet kind of jumpstart. So there are different levels of support, but basically what this really comes down to is that you guys have this ability to have more support, priority, email responses, things like that from our team. And then you also get access to our campus commons. So you'll notice a couple of your campuses might already have this. The Kansas Board of Regents in general has this whole branded Kansas Board of Regents, which you can use to kind of highlight what you as a group of people are doing together to write these textbooks, put them out there, and to find other things, resources that people on your campus are doing. For administrators, it's really helpful to be able to see how this project is growing. And it allows your group to have more than 5 textbooks total, which you guys already have well over 5 across a bunch of schools. So um, some of you are already familiar with that. Some of you don't know about this already. And I'll show you how to get to this in a minute. But it's a great tool for being able to find other things that people around you and in your community are working on. And you guys are, I think, one of the very few places where the whole state has some consortium together to be able to kind of work together to make these resources available to their students. And the background of this LibreTexts group really is to facilitate these kind of community-based organizations to make textbooks affordable for students. That's our main goal. We're all professors or people who work in academia before here. We're driven by the goal to make education accessible for our students at the lowest cost possible. And we started off with textbooks, but as you'll see today, we've expanded into lots of tools and resources, including homework and interactive assignments, things that students can use in your classes in order to really interact with the materials, because what we really care about here is pedagogy, not just books. Um, and I think many of you have already created an account. Um, 1 second, I clicked the wrong button. Many have already created an account, but if you haven't, you can go to onelibretext.org and /register and make sure you get that in there. I would recommend that you use your institution edu email address because that way we can affiliate you with your campus more easily and then log in through that. As I mentioned, we're kind of like going to introduce this whole LibreText thing and the training programs that we have here as part of this LibreText Academy. And they include those free monthly webinars that I mentioned. We had, oh, that says this was number 1. On Friday, we gave number 2. So this past Friday was our second one. In the summer, we have LibreFest and Oktoberfest. In October, LibreFest is like a 4-day workshop where you can go through a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today in detail with kind of like work time in the evenings to come back and work on more things and follow up and more advanced techniques. That's something that if you're really looking at getting into this and getting something built before August next year, it's in the, I think it's the 21st of July, right around the middle of or late July is when it's scheduled. And that's a really intensive, long process. In October, we do a 1-day crash course session, which is great for new faculty at your institutions to start teaching there, get familiar with things, and then give them kind of a jumpstart-ish type thing like this meeting to say, hey, this is a great thing for you to go and attend and see what's available out there so that while they're teaching that first year, maybe they want to think about what they might want to do and then attend that longer session in the summer. In addition to that, though, we do have in-person and virtual workshops that are available through the Academy. Those are not free things, but they're things that we offer as extra professional development opportunities. So if you wanted to have one of us come out and give a workshop on how to write a textbook or how to use online homework in your course, those sorts of things can be really useful. We've done a number of those. And in addition to that, we're starting to grow a cohort training program where people can come through and learn about these things either as a group of people at an institution or if there's a bunch of organic chemists that are all wanting to get together to make a homework set that they can use across all the campuses, those kind of things. We also have long-term mentoring programs. So if you have a sabbatical program or something that you want to work on getting some material out there, you can work with us and have some regular scheduled meetings to keep that project moving, and we'll work with you to get that going. And we're working on building some other things, or if you're an OER librarian who wants to build some module for training your faculty, we can help with that so that things are all hosted in the same place. And just as something that we don't bring up too often, but I think is really important to know at this level of a consortium, if you're working on grants that include dissemination projects or you want to host some materials, we also work with groups to write grants, get, if make us your dissemination progress, or if you want to write a grant that has some other sort of materials. We work with a lot of institutions to build these things in a collaborative way, and work with people. So let's get started. That kind of gives you an idea of all the resources that we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about specific support along the way, but that gives you the idea of where this can go from here. Um, if you see this little rocket ship up in the left-hand corner at any time, that you're throughout all the websites you see today. This is called our launch pad. It brings you to a page that looks like this and brings you to looking at all of the different services that we have and all of the libraries that we have. So on the screen right here, you can see from this main launch pad, you can get to our homework system, which is Adapt, our new writing support platform, which is Antecedent, which involves support for long-term writing projects and can help with like combating AI to look at writing structures. Our Commons, which is basically our catalog. The Conductor, which is our project management system for anybody who's looking at building materials on our platform. Jupyter Hub, which is a Jupyter notebook. So if you're familiar with coding and teaching coding, Jupyter notebooks are a common way to incorporate coding into your classroom in a cloud-based manner. And then Nova's up and coming. Those two little toolbars in the upper right-hand corner. So those are kind of under construction right now. This little guy here. Jupyter Hub should probably be up pretty soon. And if you have specific questions about that, feel free to ask them later about when being notified when things are up and running. And then the support center that I'll talk about a little later. So you can get to all those things right there from that launchpad. In addition, I highlighted the Commons and Conductor because that's what we're going to talk about a lot today. All of our libraries that we have. So we have libraries across the curriculum for many different fields from K through 12. Those are actually books that would be used for K through 12 teachers, but might be useful for the Department of Education to look at resources and maybe use projects to build things in their classroom, in their education to become teachers. We have a lot of collaborators there. We started off as a chemistry wiki, so the chemistry library is by far the broadest. From freshman to senior year, you can use every single class all the way through to graduation. We have materials for that major, and we've expanded quite a bit into other ones. Right now I'm working with people building public health books in the medicine library, the little plus sign in the corner. And I have a meeting working on expanding other resources into biology right now as well. You'll also notice a couple unique ones over here, the global one and the Ukraine one, as well as the Spanish one. These ones are our international libraries, and I'll note that those are not specifically for teaching those languages. If you go into the Spanish library, you'll not only see Spanish classes, meaning about the language of Spanish, but you'll also see another chemistry library where everything is in Spanish. And we're working a lot to kind of make this as broad of a useful resource as possible across many different students and many different facilities. When you log in, you'll have to just log in with your same username and password. I will let you know. Just always look to see for a login. We have a single sign-on, so once you get your registration and you've logged into one place, you're logged in across all of our resources. If you don't see your name in the corner, just click on the login. If you're already logged in somewhere else, just one click will get you logged in without having to re-sign in. But always check to make sure you got that login in the upper corner. Within our libraries themselves, we have some different types of things that you would go and use in your classrooms. So if you ask somebody if they use LibreTexts and they say, yes, I use LibreTexts, and you ask them, oh, did you write your own textbook? And they say, no, I just use it for my classroom straight out of the box, just like I would use a normal publisher. That would be something like our bookshelves. So the bookshelves would be like going into a library and finding just this author wrote a book about Finance 101, and that book right there is useful for everybody, but it has more information than anyone actually is going to teach, and usually people use some subset of it. So it's not curated for your class, but it is just a good general textbook, and most people are using something like that. As a LibreNet member, those books that you saw me highlight that are all from Kansas authors, those would be in the campus bookshelf. So that would be where you would find books that are specifically for one institution and within that library. So here we're looking at the humanities library. You click on the campus bookshelves. then you can find if there's your institution will have a separate library inside of there with books that might be called something like Finance 121, because that's one by that instructor, kind of curated to match their curriculum and their pedagogy. And each of the libraries that you see there has all of these materials. In addition, there's also learning objects that, which, depending on your field, can look something different. I like to say this is like everything you would find that would accompany a textbook. So we have interactive modules. We've got like 3D visualizations. We might have laboratory experiments. Those sorts of things would all live there, and you can link to them however you'd like, but also those materials could be just brought in as something that just goes along with your campus book. So your book could have some textbook chapters and then some other ancillary materials like a learning module or a module on global warming or something like that in your classroom. Within a specific bookshelf, especially for like the humanities library, you might find that there's a lot of subdisciplines. So the humanities libraries covers everything from art to composition courses to dance courses to history courses. All those things can be found in that one library. So if you are thinking, I didn't see my specific field there, more than likely we do have books in your field. They might just be in a different library, and I'll show you briefly how to find those things. Let me make sure I didn't see any questions. Sorry if I don't catch anything in the... Oh, great. Thanks, Delmar. Delmar mentioned that the Jupyter Hub is actually up, so my screenshot's just old if we haven't taken down the wrench. All right, so once you're inside of any of those specific fields, then you're going to get to the sub-disciplines of that field. So within the composition section of that library, you might find a grammar sub-library, introductory. So this is really going into the library is actually more like going into an actual library and then walking around the bookshelves and trying to find the book that you want. You have to know which shelf you need to go to, which floor of the library you need to go to. So it's actually not that user-friendly for just going to find things. Because what if somebody at a school like College of the Canyons actually has a book that somebody's already written for their course, but you don't know to go look inside of their campus bookshelf? But it is still available for you to use and modify in your courses. So we're going to get to looking at that commons later. There's also a bunch of unpublished work. So if you are working with us in building books, it's always good to know at least the fact that what it means to publish with us. So if you're working with us and you have an unpublished book, that's not going to be public yet. So that's going to go into a workbench so that only you and your team members can see it until you decide that it's ready for public use in our library. So that one you won't see unless you log in. A lot of people are confused and they get worried about like what happens if this isn't ready for public view yet. That's fine. We have a whole workbench that's allocated to works in progress. And once you publish it, you can still go and edit it. So this is a living book for you. If you make one for your campus to use for one's course, you can edit it every single semester. You can even edit it as you go. We have version control and things like that. They keep everything up and updated, but also backwards compatible to make sure we can see what's happened and who's touched what. So we do try to keep things very rigorous in terms of keeping track of licensing and authorship and everything like that. So as I said, if you do want to know if a book that you're looking at that someone sent you is published or unpublished, you'll get this rainbow bar across the top. If you've got a bunch of different options like buying print copy or downloading it as a PDF, and that restriction says public up there, then these things are all published and available. If you're logged in and you get to a book that has semi-private and it doesn't have anything but a red PDF button, then this book is not actually published yet, and only available to people who have access to view it, or if you happen to get a link, you might be able to stumble across it, but you won't have any editing access to it. So we do kind of keep that in place for people to be able to look at it. So if you're looking to author a textbook, I'm going to go over this really briefly, but this is the thing I did a long webinar on Friday, and we have that recording if you wanted to go through it. Or if you have further questions about this, then you can feel free to ask. I'm going to start off with step one, which is actually the one probably everyone here would like to hear, which is how do you even find what you have? What is on the library? How do we use it? Because really, if you're authoring a textbook, the first step is really what exists in the library already. Like, what don't need to reinvent the wheel if it already exists out there. So we're gonna spend a little more time looking at that commons that we looked at briefly earlier. So this is a screenshot of the full campus commons, and earlier I showed you the campus commons for Kansas Board of Regents. If I were to go to the Launchpad from anywhere or just go to commons.libretext.org, you'll get to this long list of all of our textbooks that we have in the library, and you can sort them by which library they're in. So if you know you're going to look for biology textbooks, you can sort them there. Subject areas. If you know who the author is, you can look at it there. So let's go click there. You can find all of our biology books, and you can also search here for topics. So if you want to look at a introduction course or a microbiology course, you could search for it here and find all of those resources for the different books that we have available in the library. Once you're searching for it, you can see what type of library it's in. So this is in the biology library, this is in the geoscience library. And if you were to go up to the campus commons here, this is where you would find the Kansas Board of Regents, for instance. And I think some of you are at campuses that have their own campus commons as well. And I scrolled right past it. So Kansas State University and Kansas Board of Regents are here. And if you go to those, this is the same exact platform, but this one only houses the books that your department or your institution has created, and those get managed by whoever has managing access at your institution for putting the books into there and making sure they all look good. I will say a lot of people, administrators at campuses, really enjoy having this as just an easy showcase to stakeholders in their community. People are interested in some solid place to go to see what the progress is of some effort being done to make some benchmarks or to kind of keep track of how these books are getting published, how many we published this year, how many more we have available that are making our classes more affordable and accessible to students from all economic backgrounds. Great. So that's our campus commons. Let's look a little bit at what all is in there. I like to use screenshots just because in case things take a long time to load, it makes it a little bit nicer. But once you're taking a look at one of the books, you can see the table of contents of that book, the licensing that's available with the book, what library it's in, links to the book, who the author is, a lot of materials like that. And you can take a look at the PDF. You can go straight to the book and look at that, downloading the pages, print files, and the LMS files. So that would give you versions of the book that you could upload into your CMS directly. And also you can submit peer reviews. So this is something that some people make a lot of use of, some people don't, but you can have people peer review your book and submit some kind of detailed form about your book, and then you can go look at those peer reviews later. Only KSU. Oh, yeah. Okay. So right now, only Kansas State has one up here. Great. So there's a lot of resources. One other really useful resource is we are an online library, but we do offer print books. So from that same place there, you saw that buy a print textbook. And we have a bookstore that you can go, and if you have to do large orders for your bookstore, we work directly with your bookstores. And just email us. I believe the email address is actually just bookstore@libretext.org. Or just the general email. If you're not sure who to send it to info@libretext.org. We're a small group of people, so it will get to the right person if you send it to info. Agriculture, I would suggest searching because I know we have some agriculture books already. And you're right, it does span a lot of different areas. So depending on what kind of subdiscipline or emphasis that book is going to be on, I think, yeah, I wouldn't even hazard to guess right now where the majority of them are. But because the libraries are getting more and more expansive and we can put subdisciplines, not subdisciplines, you can put disciplines inside of other libraries that are broader. We tend to do that way. Oh, and Delmar says we did. I was going to say, I think that we, at one point, I've seen a logo for it.
We,
It probably
we
discontinued.
used to have our own library because I'm a faculty member at UC Davis, which is also an Aggie campus. In fact, that's technically our mascot. Um, but it wasn't as big at that time to justify it, so we repurposed it. Right now, there is a section on Aggie on agriculture. I think it might be in the biology library, but there's also some things that are useful for that in the workforce for food preparation, other than that. But we can always do a search, as Justin mentioned, in the catalog for Aggie or agricultural. And if we have the meta tags set on that, which we may or may not, they would come up with there. It looks like that meta tag is
Oh, I have
not
it set.
indicated.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say, I think I actually have some filters already on there.
Oh, okay. Um, if it gets big enough in order to justify a full library instead of a bookshelf on a library, we can build it in order to get to that. So we're of similar mindsets, but there are certainly more here because Iowa has done a lot of OER um, in agriculture, especially around genetics and other things that should be findable there. I'll make a point
Yeah,
to
we've
look
got
at.
2 books from Iowa in the biology library. It looks like there's one in the workforce library that's
We
more
actually have a
focused on
lot. We have a
teaching.
lot more. I don't think they have agriculture as a meta tag, so we need to expand the meta tagging to include that. It's just not in the title. That's all. So, um, and
Well, at
soil.
least we can see
We have a
we've
lot of
got 2
soil
different
books.
libraries already.
Yeah.
Great. And there's some other. Okay, great. Um, Cool. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we have in our commons and how to find what already exists. And you saw that some of those were um, books that had like course names as well as some other ones that were just general discipline ones. So we're going to talk really briefly about OER books and licensing and what we can do for harvesting. So within each of those libraries, we have lots of different types of textbooks. So uh, we are an OER library, so we are built for pedagogy, built for teaching, built for making faculty in control of their resources and building a community around that. We're not a distributor of our personal library, right? Our own writing. So this is not a Justin and Delmar wrote books, please use them as they are. This is a community thing. So to make that as useful as possible for faculty, we've had people that say, hey, I've been using so-and-so's textbook for ages and I like the structure of it, but I don't want to have to pay for it because I'm not that happy with the homework or the support or the fact that every 2 years I've got to buy a whole new textbook and redo all my page numbers. So for that, we do have um, what we call maps. So maps are uh, our content or content from our library that we have put in the same order, so the same chapter numbers as an existing textbook that you might have already used in your class. So it's not the content of that book, but it is, if you're familiar with a lot of introductory textbooks, the content, how we teach it actually in that page is not that different. But that order might be something that you just want to keep because you'd like to say test 5 is always over chapters 1 through 4. Okay, then we can keep those chapters 1 through 4. So that's what we call a map. If you see an actual one that just says it's a book or has a parentheses with some author name after it. So for instance, my book is here actually part as Moore et al. This is a book that me and my collaborators actually did write ourselves and put our images into it. And that's inside of our bookshelf. So that's a standard textbook. We didn't write that for a class. We wrote it for anyone who wants to teach Gen Chem. You should be able to take that off the shelf. And you might need to skip chapter 2 or section 3.4. So this is, and you see we also have OpenStax books in there. Any open educational resources thing we can pull into our library again, because we're about pedagogy. We're not about distributing something that we are going to push on you as being the only way to teach this material. And we have faculty who like to say, I'd like to take that section, a couple chapters out of that book, couple chapters out of this book, make something that really matches my pedagogical style. And then that's what we would call making your own remixes of those textbooks, so your own custom version of those. We incorporate lots of materials. If you have an OER resource out there that you've either used in your class in PDF form or something like that you've acquired, or it's one that's already out there with part of some other OER library or some published OER book. If it's got an OER license, it's free for you to use, to copy, to move around and reuse in your classroom. That's just what open licensing is about. And you can even get us to, you can submit a harvesting request. We'll go out there, we'll take what you have, we will put that into our library so that it's there for you to use. Because really our focus is on making something one-stop shop for you to be able to use all the OER resources that you would like in your classroom without needing to go and direct your students to here and here and here and here, because that's not pedagogical best practice. So we have those contributed textbooks, so people writing a textbook, throwing it in the bookshelf, textbook maps, which are same chapter order but our material put into it, integrated and harvested textbooks, so those are ones from other OER libraries that get pulled in at someone's request. And then you can make your own custom remixes, and you can also take other people's custom remixes. So if you have a colleague at another school who's been using something for a while, you can take their book, remix it into your own to make your own. Um, for instance, this is an example that I give. I don't know if I have a. This is a instructor here that I worked with who redid their textbook to not be based on chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, but by unit 1, because that's everything that's on test 1, unit 2, because that's everything that's on test 2. And that way her class and her book mirrored the structure of her class to, again, decrease that cognitive load and make it easier for students to work on the materials. So if you have materials out there that you want to use, we're the place to put them, especially as LibreNet members. We have a lot of support for you to get these books in there and up and running. You can contribute things with your students as well. This is something that we do really enjoy and have used in this group for a long time, is open pedagogical approaches to teaching. So this means it's not all on you. You get students involved in writing textbook pages. You get students involved in writing modules or exemplars in your field, or some new context for a different changing climate. Either it's political, socio-economic, however you want to have people approach your material. And then once you have those in your wheelhouse, then you can put those into your course, maybe for next year as examples, or swap out materials. Really work with your students to build better teaching resources. And a lot of research out there says that getting students to be involved in the writing process makes them more involved in their textbooks in general. So a lot of faculty, this is my background, have recognized students don't use textbooks. You can assign them to read them till you're blue in the face, and they don't tend to really engage with them. But having them read a textbook in order to write something in the textbook that they know might be useful for some other students is a great way to kind of build that. So you can have students contribute things from scratch via an extra credit assignment, for instance, or you can have students integrate other content, maybe from interviews with faculty members or some other OER source that they found, or maybe reviewing some NIST data, which is publicly available, and you want to do some up-to-date study on something. Faculty can do raw content. That's what you probably assumed that we do here, is help faculty to write textbooks, and we definitely do that. Four, you can integrate that existing material. That'd be more like the harvesting that I mentioned. And then you can also have faculty-student collaborations, either as, for instance, in my research group when I was a professor, we did a lot of work on integrating student materials into the textbook that we would use as group projects for my research group. So we have a lot of different ways for us to engage with the library as educators, but also within our classrooms. Because it's always a question when we start talking about integrating textbook material, what formats there are. I'll just bring up Preeti here. She's newly promoted to the Director of Harvesting and Integration. And I have a link there, but I'll also show you how to find that in a few minutes. There's a lot of different formats we take that we have experience in taking those formats. I mentioned if you have a PDF or a Word document or a Google Doc, or if it's a website that's out there, all those things are things that we can take and help you put into there. And I don't mean that just as going to some other website that someone else has had, but maybe you have a material from your class that you've worked on. A lot of our materials actually do come from faculty in late stages of their career who have spent a lot of time curating some material and just don't want to see it go to waste. And they are always getting people asking to use things that they've created, and then they work with us to put them into our library. It's my personal goal whenever I go to a conference or anything to talk to young faculty so that they start using us in the beginning of their career instead of the end of their career, so that the materials that they've built over time are built on the platform that already gives a sustainability model for their materials. And to do that, when you're logged in, it's to our conductor, which is one of those little buttons on that main Launchpad page. There's a harvesting request button, and then a form you can fill out that will go straight to Preeti and her team for and getting that material into our library. Once in the library, we have a really nice and going to be getting even better this year remixer, which allows you to choose which library you're looking at. This is the business one right now. Those campus bookshelves, things that are in sandboxes even, or workbenches, taking those pages, dragging and dropping them into the order that you want, adding your own blank pages into your textbook, and basically making your own structure for your course or textbook if you want to keep thinking about it as a textbook, and then publishing and making that custom remix textbook from materials that already exist. So for instance, if your goal was to take a book that exists on some OER published book that's out there published on the website with a Creative Commons license, you could submit a harvest request to get that into our library. Then you could go to the remixer and then make your own version of that that you could then play around with and mix and match however you wanted to for your course or for your group of people in your course. One of my roles I played as a professor was the manager of a bunch of adjunct faculty. So one of the things that I always did was build resources that were kind of a template that I would hand to all my adjuncts, and then they would have that nice cut clean. Nobody had to think about, well, which sections am I supposed to teach? Which sections am I not supposed to teach? This is what is our agreed upon department curriculum for this course. And then the students all know that they have the same materials, and the faculty don't have to think about what they're teaching for their lesson plans. And you can also make PowerPoint slides and host them here as well. As part of our commons, we have ancillary materials that can be published and accessible for anybody that's working with you on your project. Whether you want those to be publicly available or just for people that are editors or access or part of your project team. And just as a little plug, if you're interested in this remixing thing, we're giving our Wabbit webinar in March, on March 21st, on how to do remixing and basic editing of textbooks. And that's the webinar that will, if you have a login, you'll be getting the March newsletter, and it will tell you when that is or give you more information on that. I mentioned the conductor as being a place where you can work on teams. This is especially useful for administrators who might want to facilitate their faculty who are working on ongoing projects to kind of help them project manage or to keep track of administrative role things like, hey, I need to get this kind of person to work on, we need to make a meeting, set up those sorts of things. That project management stuff all works through our conductor, so you don't need to think about it outside of there. As a quick overview, again, you get to the conductor by going to that launch pad in the corner and clicking on the conductor icon. You get another one of our little rainbow bars with lots of tools. Some things you can do are create tasks and timelines, facilitate communication threads, so you don't have to do emails all the time. It'll all be in one little spot. You can review those peer reviews I mentioned earlier. So if you wanted to look at who's written reviews of your book and what they've said, that would be where you'd do it. This is how you access that customization tool that we mentioned, the remixer. We also have accessibility tools, which if you want me to take a look at those in a bit, we can take a look at our accessibility checker, which goes through and sees if your images all have alt text, if you've got any other sorts of issues with your book, heading numbers and things like that. And we are rolling out every week. It gets more broad, our AI for metadata and alt text. So that thing that Delmar mentioned about tagging, it's obviously a burden to go through and say, this book covers this, this page covers this and this. And then writing summaries for your pages is something that a lot of faculty just don't end up taking the time to do because they spend a lot of time writing the book. And then going back through and writing a 1-paragraph summary for each of your pages is really tedious. So those tedious tools are what we've helped put into our platform to help authors write, because we think that's something that AI is very good at. And it's something that's short, brief, and easy to curate. So you can click on a button, say, generate a summary for this page for me, and read it real quick. And it's much quicker to kind of go through that and take a look at that output. I did mention that we have our LibreTexts Academy. I'm going to visit that page real quick, especially because I wanted to bring up this construction guide. When I mentioned that harvesting list of formats, those are available in our construction guide. So if you go to LibreTexts.org, you get our website with lots of our information. You can see right here. Next week is Open Ed Week, which I wanted to just highlight that there's a lot of resources there. We're giving presentations every single day next week. So if you're interested in that, I think that our full schedule will be available on our website. I think Jennifer said she was working on it today. But the Open Ed Week has a lot of introductory things about the remixer and the adapt homework set. And I'll be giving one on the Academy programs in general. And then already we have our webinar on customizing OER for your courses. That's using the OER remixer as well as basic editing techniques. And at the top, if you click on the Academy there, this would be our, like I would call our professional development homepage, where we have a list of the sorts of resources that we have for faculty. I've already had one student submit an email to this asking for homework help, so maybe I need to make it more clear. But we offer a lot of different things. Those things I mentioned earlier in the day about in-person virtual trainings, cohort trainings, those professional development things that we offer as supplemental services. Those are all available under the faculty resources as our services. And then here's a link to our construction guide, which is kind of our manual for how do you edit this? How do you add a video? How do you edit, how do you use the remixer? This is our tool fest for that, and information about the Libre Fest and materials are all located there. And that's, again, just from LibreTexts.org, and then you can access the Academy. Perfect. So like I mentioned, the LibreTexts construction guide, you'll see there's a couple chapters there. If you happen to be interested in frameworks for textbook design, pedagogical design, these are the ones that me and my research group actually published. And then that goes on to looking at how do you build it? How do you find things in the commons? How do you find things in the, use the conductor, getting started, remixing, and then you'll see it goes on to basic editing, advanced editing, page settings. So how do you do all that metadata? And this continues to grow and build as we add more resources. So you have that kind of user manual. And I did mention the webinar, but just for your own knowledge, we're kind of working through this with our monthly webinars. So we did, the first webinar was on fundamentals and the commons. Second one, that was on Fridays on conductor and getting started in writing. And then the next webinar is going to be on remixing and basic editing. So kind of working through this, and throughout the year, we'll have one of these a month. So if you want to keep working alongside us for those. So we've talked a lot about books, what we have available and how you use them, but I did mention we have more than that. We have a lot of services as well, things that we have available for you. And that's the things at the top there. So we have the libraries, which I've spent a lot of time on, and then what services that we have available for you. And as you kind of have heard, we have the Adapt, which is our adaptive homework system. It has it has 3 different types of like web work. It supports H5P questions. It supports iMath AS questions. I can't remember the last one. But basically a lot of different common tools. If you have a Canvas on campus with a question bank, you can export that and import those right into our question bank. So this solves the problem like our libraries do of let's not have people try to use all these different tools in different places. We have one homework system that can handle the vast majority of the types of questions and formats that anybody would write questions in. They're all open educational resources, so faculty from anywhere can come look at our library if they're publicly available, and you've licensed them that way. Then they get to see all these different homework questions, and you can use them in your book, in your course, mix and match them. We have, I think, over 250,000 questions right now in our book across all the disciplines, and people are adding to it every single day. The commons I already mentioned, the Jupyter Hub, embedded data encoding. So that would be, I want to have students dynamically work on statistics in the textbook and have a little histogram that they can change the bin sizes right there in the book and kind of interact with that. But they also have the standard Jupyter notebooks that you're used to, which would be places where you could have students work on coding notebooks and write code somewhere that they can share them with the faculty, and work on assignments and do demonstrations there. Studio is our platform that allows you to author H5P questions. So that's interactive questions. The drag and drop, you can click on things, watch a little video and answer a question about it. Those sorts of interactives can be there. Those can be things that you put right embedded into your textbook, or you can have it as a question in Adapt, or you can have students go straight there, but that's pretty rare. You'll notice that we like to have things be able to put into your textbook as much as possible, so that really students have a low threshold for accessing all these things instead of trying to go to a bunch of different places. You can actually embed Adapt homework questions right into your textbook as well. You could have one set of Adapt questions that are formative, so that they're not graded, but they're just like, I'm going to check my knowledge as I go through the book, and students can use those to learn. Or you can have them that are actually tied to your students' login, and then you get grades. But they can still look at those questions right there on the textbook for that course. We have our newest joiner to the services with antecedent writing. Antecedent writing is a tool that lets you do, I would say, longer time period writing assignments. So writing assignments that might include an initial draft, a secondary draft with feedback, a final draft. So this would be like a long lab report, a course-long thesis. If you're in a composition class, obviously pretty much every single one of those would end up being some sort of a longer form. And this was actually developed and built by a composition professor. And it tracks students writing character word by word as they go, and then allows faculty to see what they call writing profile. So basically, did you copy and paste big chunks of text at once? Did you just slowly write throughout your whole entire term without ever going back to revise anything? What was your pattern of behavior as you were writing? And it allows faculty to focus more on the writing process that they want to teach, as opposed to the writing product that they get out at the end, which I personally really am a big fan of this, because with the advent of AI, it's that writing process that might become more and more important to see. Yeah, maybe they did copy and paste a chunk of text as a summary at the end of their paragraph that they might have used AI for, but then they went through and revised that, and they revisited that over the course of a couple weeks. And that makes for the training people in how to really engage with the material. And then Nova is where we're going to have template courses. So basically something you could just plop into your course in Canvas or whatever, that has textbooks as well as quiz questions in a native format. And we're working on building that right now. Oh, I skipped over Conductor because we kind of chatted about that quite a bit. And then we have the Support Center. So the Support Center is where you get tickets and questions. If you have a question about something, you can always submit it there. Again, we are a small team, but because we're a small team, if somebody goes on vacation, you might not get a response in the next week. So emailing directly to me or Delmar is not always the best choice. Emailing info is helpful. That goes to everybody in the group. If you go and you submit a ticket through our support system, that goes to our triage and it gets sent to whoever's available, so we can jump on it and get through it pretty quickly. And it allows us to kind of know exactly where you were, and you could submit screenshots and things like that to help us with any of your questions that you have. Oh, this is the other one. H5P was the third one. So some other things about Adapt, because this is a very common thing to that we get questions about from faculty. Adapt is very low cost. So that was number one. Our textbooks are free. Our homework system is, we like to say, it's as low of a cost as possible for us to still maintain like student data security. So we have to maintain student data security, so we have to charge something in order to just kind of maintain that. Right now it is $15 per semester, regardless of the number of courses, because we don't really care how many courses students are accessing. What we care about is just maintaining their private data. So for one student to use Adapt for one semester, regardless of whether they're using it for antecedent in their English class, and they're using it for homework for their biology class, and they're also using it for lab reports in their biology lab course, they could be using it for all 5 of their courses, and it still is only going to cost those students $15 a semester, which is extremely the lowest you're going to find for anything with the amount of capacity that we have for having student graded materials. And we do have things like organic molecule structures and audio recordings. We have discussion thing where students can actually record videos of talking to each other or texting each other, writing comments to each other. We've got alignments to frameworks if you wanted to have some frameworks in your class to make sure that you're hitting benchmarks for maybe some certification that you have for your department. All those things can be put into there. We also have things like what we might call source and subordinate or alpha and beta courses, where you want to keep one course, but then have any changes that you might make to that course go to all of the maybe adjuncts in your department so that they'll get any updates right away. We can tie those courses together. It's actually very powerful. With extremely powerful and low cost things, there is a learning curve. So if you're thinking about using this, definitely start attending some things and reach out for some resources that we have to start learning how that works before a week before your class. And you can take advantage of it. So for instance, we do have like learning trees. Sorry if this is a little blurry. This is where you can have learning modules where you say, hey, I'm going to teach them this with a little H5P thing, and then I'm going to ask them a question. Depending on that question, what might they need to go look at a video and another assessment question to finalize out that, or another training on some other aspect of it. So you can really make very adaptive assignments in there. This is a picture of the Jupyter Hub in practice. I mentioned you could have code built into here. So this is actually a little snippet of code where you're going to make a box plot and you can run that and it will actually dynamically draw that box plot there right inside of the textbook for your students. And then they can change this. So for instance, that histogram one, maybe you want to change it to 20 breaks down to 10 breaks to have students investigate how that might be different. And this allows, especially, this is probably most commonly used in statistics classes from what I've seen. I just zoomed in there. There's a picture of an example of what this looks like right on the screen when you can draw that. H5P, we have a whole library of H5P questions. Like I said, those are the most interactive ones. So you could actually have things that are dynamic, videos, like diagrams that people can interact with. And the studio has a lot of those and allows you to author them and import your own questions you might have built in other platforms into the other areas. This is a picture of that antecedent. So if you were curious about looking at that, this is an example of a student who was writing by themselves and then copied and pasted a bunch, wrote some, copied and pasted a bunch, copied and pasted a bunch, and then right before it was due, changed a couple wording, little specks along the way. Whereas a student who wrote some, went back, rewrote that, continued writing, jumped back up, rewrote a little bit of that beginning. So they kind of deleted some stuff and rewrote it. And then after maybe the first draft was due, they went back to the beginning and started rewriting their whole entire thing and editing that writing with lots of back and forth. So this is, again, more focused on the writing process, and it replaces Microsoft Word. It's an online writing word processor. I actually just chatted about that. I mentioned the conductor again, but I'm just kind of walking through all those services. So that same conductor is located right there on the Launchpad for you, along with the tools that I mentioned, managing your team, making a timeline for your project, looking at those peer reviews, accessibility tools, and where things are located. In addition to all of those, just when you're building materials, you can put a lot of interactive materials right into your textbook. We have CalcPlot 3D, which allows you to put interactive 3D plots into your book so people can interact with them. If you're in the physics, engineering, chemistry, biology, a lot of the sciences world, you might be familiar with the PhET simulations. Those can go right into your text and you can have students engage in those. We have interactive structure viewers for proteins, organic molecules. If you've worked with MoleView before, we work with the people who write MoleView to put some of those structure into our assessment as well as our books. And then there's this GeoGebra, which is another interactive geometry work. I mentioned support, and I mentioned getting directly to us with our support. this little blue button in the bottom right corner is the question mark. That's where you'd go to submit a question that's specifically about a page. I really like this because it lets us know exactly where you were, what lab you were at, what text you were looking at, what the URL was, and what your login is, so we can make sure we know exactly what account you're coming from. You don't have to remember which account you were in. Click that little blue button, it'll pop up, and it'll allow you to submit a support ticket right there. And it's on all of our pages that we manage ourselves. And then you can go straight to that support center button right there to see how your tickets are doing. You'll also get emails about how things are moving along. And in addition, we also have our YouTube channel, which every webinar that we've given, every LibreFest instruction that we've given, every Oktoberfest, all of these things and the monthly webinars are posted there as we get them cleaned up. So the monthly webinar is already up there. And basically every tool that you're looking for, you can probably find a webinar that already exists for walking through basic how to do along the way there. And I did mention the LibreTexts Academy, and I'm just going to bring it up again. If you have questions about any of these sorts of things, that's where I come in, and our team can work on coming up with like, hey, let's go ahead and have like a little 3-hour workshop on one of these things where we're going to work on something. Or maybe your institution wants to subscribe to having a designated office hours for your campus where we're going to sit on the call once every 2 weeks for an hour that's just for you. We do have free office hours that are every Tuesday and Thursday at it's at noon my time, 9 a.m. Pacific. So for Kansas, I believe that's you guys are Central Time. So 11 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's at our standard Zoom call. So that's zoom.libretext.org, and that's available at the bottom of every email signature that you're going to get from us. We'll have that information as well. And then obviously that support ticket, you can always and send information questions that you might have. So that is kind of my big overview of all the resources we have. I don't see anything in the chat for specific things you want to go. Somebody just said something. Oh, good. Thanks. I'm glad you can make it. Anyone have anything that they want me to like walk through or show in more detail? Happy to do so.
Hi, Justin. I have a couple of questions. I am the OER coordinator for my institution, and I'm pretty familiar with the basics of LibreText, but I keep running into trouble when I am trying to do group authored textbooks or trying to get permissions for more than one faculty member to see into a sandbox, that sort of thing. So I guess my first question is how to create a group textbook. And I apparently am not doing that quite right because they're not able to see it. And the second question is there a way to get permission for someone else to see into your sandbox? And I just tried walking through the steps you showed me a while ago, and it's not letting me. So I must be doing something
No problem.
wrong.
So I'll go ahead and walk you through it. So we're going to start off by going to the conductor project, and I will show you where you can also do it a different way. If you're looking at a specific book, so if you already have a sandbox course, for instance, I should have just had a specific book up. Let's go to mine. If you're looking at a specific book, so you can go straight to that conductor project by looking at that purple button right there, and that'll take you to the conductor directly that's tied to that book, and then you can edit those there. If you are starting from scratch or you already have that conductor project in your conductor page, then you can go to your conductor page, which you saw. I went just to the launch pad to the conductor, and then there's that green button at the top that says create a conductor project. So if you're starting from scratch and you want to say, we're going to work on a book together, I'm going to create a conductor project. I'm going to add the right team members to it. So if I go to one project that is somebody who just started working on a project with us. When you click on this manage team up here, you'll see people who are all going to be in that, and you can either invite by email, or more useful is if you know that they're already in LibreTexts, you could type their name there. So right there is you, I think. Johnson County, is that you? Maybe. And you can add them to the team right there, and then they'll show up in a list. Once they're in the list, you have different user permissions. If they're a team lead or a liaison or a member, then they have editing access to your book and all the pages in your book immediately. I mean, it might take a second or two to process through it, but that's how you edit who's allowed to look at the book. And those ones will all get editing access to that book, even if it's in a workbench. The auditor is one that you might want to use for somebody who you want to have access to look at the book, but not someone who should be able to edit that book. So even though it's not published yet, and it's in a workbench, you can give that person auditor permissions, and then if they have the link to that book, or if they're logged in, they should be able to access that book directly. So all management is really, if you've been working with us for a while, there used to be other ways of doing this, and we have tried to move everything into the conductor. So there's a one-stop shop for editing who's on the team, who has access, who has editing permissions, whether things are published or not. That all goes through the conductor. Is that what you've tried before?
Yeah, we did. And unfortunately, they were both on the project together. For some reason, they weren't able to see it. And it may have been that kind of transition into Kansas, into LibreText and KBOR and all of that kind of madness, because some people had just kind of the free account and some people had the full KBOR account. And it was kind of a mess for a little bit. So
The
it may
account
be that
shouldn't
that has
matter.
corrected itself, but I just wanted to check.
Yeah, and in when people are working on a project, one thing I will encourage is get them to go to the conductor page for that and click on the open project link here to make sure they're going to the right place, because they might have bookmarked something on their tab and maybe we moved it to a different library, or maybe we um, or maybe you might have renamed something in the title and that might have changed the URL. So if they always are going to the project and then clicking here, they'll always take them to the book. And if they are added to the project in the conductor, then they definitely have access to this page, and they definitely have access to that link, and then they can click on it. Um, and then this would also be where you would access emailing to those people and making those task lists.
I may jump in here just briefly.
Sure.
Another issue that pops up is that oftentimes people create multiple accounts, and so when you add somebody from one account into your conductor page, they may have a Gmail account that they've created, and they don't know that they are in a different account coming in. And we are working on ways in order to make it so you can actually sort of connect accounts and say, okay, here are all the same accounts, kind of making it so that you don't have these issues that pop up. Or if you create an account already and then you log in via Microsoft Active Directory, that may initiate a different account and such. So we were, let's say, not free range accounts in the beginning or in the past, but we're going through a more centralization and a better control over the accounts in order to be able to hinder that. And one of the ways in order to address that is we stopped giving out accounts to non-academic email addresses. So when people say they want a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, we just basically say no. But in some cases, and I'm not sure if it's any of the campuses in Kansas, a campus may have multiple email addresses because they'll have aliases. Like, for example, there's one community college district in my area, California, in which the instructors actually have 6 different email addresses. Uh, that are all referencing depending upon if it's their district or their campus, or if it's Microsoft, if it's Yahoo, if it's Google, or if it's a central sign-on infrastructure. And it's been quite nightmarish in order to be able to coordinate for that reason. Again, I don't know if that's necessarily the issue here, but it's worthwhile in order to make people pay attention to which account they're actually signed into, just in case that pops up.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of encourage you to not use the add people by email address and rather do the search by name, and make sure you, because then if they only have one account and you don't know what email address it's tied to, One other example that Delmar didn't bring up is if somebody joined LibreTexts with an email address from a community college they taught at, and then they started adjuncting for another college in the area, they probably won't have an email address tied to the new college because they already have one for the old one. And then you can make sure you can see which account that is and when you add it to them. Another thing I'll say is when you do add them to the project, they will get an email right away saying you've been added to this project. If they don't get that email, they haven't been added to the project with the email address that they're assuming. So that will also help you to diagnose a problem early. Say, hey, you should have gotten an email from LibreTexts. It should have invited you to this project name. If you didn't, let me know, and then we can head that off at the pass. Great. Other questions? Things you'd like to see?
Just jump in and say that I've been to a couple of the office hours, and the support that I've seen others receive and the support that I've received has been phenomenal. So excellent job, Delmar and Justin and your team. I highly recommend that as an excellent way to get help like directly in your project, in the weeds kind of thing. I can't speak highly enough about that office hours.
Thanks. We appreciate that. I will say everyone that works with us is really excited to help people make their courses better. So I'm glad to hear that that shows through.
Sounds like when I ask a question to my class right now with everyone being quiet. Uh, Justin mentioned a handful of different things. One thing that he commented on was next week is Open Ed Week. If you're unfamiliar with that, that is a dedicated week that Open Ed Global, which is an organization based in Vancouver, Washington, runs for the open community in order to provide sort of a virtual marketplace of presentations, all things open. And they have over 100 to 120 different presentations that are done across the globe next week. I encourage you, if you have the time, of course, most people don't have extra time, but it gives you an opportunity in order to go and see what one campus is doing and just be able to work. It's a cornucopia of open presentations or a candy store of sorts. Most of them are recorded, so if you're unable to go to any of the presentations, you can then view it at a later date. We will be presenting a lot. The last I heard is that we've gotten the virtual prize of the most number of presentations of any organization contributing to this. And I think we have somewhere in the order of 20 or so presentations.
Yeah, I have them up on the screen right now. I think you can see them.
Right. And if you go to the Open Ed Global Open Ed Week website and you do a search on LibreText, you'll find all these things. Since most of the people here already have accounts on Libre One, our single sign-on system, you should be getting a newsletter about this later on this week in regards to it. And it is a great opportunity in order to just learn more about the different aspects of LibreText and how it's used, both from constructing of books to success stories to targeted applications of adapt or antecedent. And we also have several people who run large-ish, not as large as a state like you guys, but large-ish programs that they're trying to coordinate and how they can use the tools that we have available, specifically the Conductor tool, which is the project management infrastructure for advancing. For example, one community college is trying to organize 100 different classes that have textbooks being put together off of that. And it would be exceedingly nightmarish to do something like that via email if you didn't have some sort of organizational approach that the conductor provides you with doing so. So I encourage you, if any of those topics are interesting, to block out what you have. And of course, at least for us, and then for most presentations in this week, from other organizations, there are recordings of those that you'll be able to review at a later date.
I would also add to that, a number of these are actually given by people who are faculty members who've used us and just really enjoyed what it did for them in their classroom and are giving success story talks or demonstrating tools. We have one faculty member I know who's giving a talk that after working with us for years, decided to write a grant and started to work with us to build extra tools for her Spanish classroom, or for other sorts of. We have people built things and then incorporated into LibreTexts as additional learning tools. So this is really a collaborative and excited group of people that does more than just write a book and then put it out there. It's continually revamping, rebuilding, and growing with the faculty who can collaborate on those things. They're giving talks next week too. I can't remember who all is giving them, but
One thing of interest is the slot, the first Friday features, which is the Friday from 11 to 11:30, and I'll be presenting that. I'll be presenting a lot of these things. So if you want to hear more from me, most people don't, but nonetheless, I will be there. I'll be introducing something that Justin mentioned, is the AI tools. So as we all know, and maybe not necessarily love, AI is running rampant through academia. For a lot of pros and a lot of potential cons connected to it. AI can be used in a very constructed manner, in a very productive manner for our construction efforts. Uh, and I am still somewhat conservative in terms of how to use AI for construction, because there are lots of issues, both logistically in implementing it, but also from an ethical perspective that I'm still not comfortable with. But I am comfortable with a few things using AI that has made, uh, I think will make things much easier for us, and we've already been using it for a while. So if I backtrack a little bit and I just talk about the state of affairs for OER books. OER in general, as a mechanism in order to take the place of commercial textbooks, has been steadily growing over the years, but there's quite a disparity of quality of OER for a variety of reasons. Some OER requires or addresses fields that requires lots of effort in order to be able to build. So not everyone has the time or the support in order to be able to build an ideal textbook to take the place of a commercial product. And many times that results in books that don't have all the appropriate